What's going on, good people? Adrian Homeboy Holmes here to welcome you to the new season of Super Gamer Book Club. New season? Where's the old season, I hear you say? Well, you can find all the episodes of the old season from our original book club host Zetch on our Patreon. And you can also find the newest episodes of season 2 with host me, ding, on Patreon as well. Me, Garrett, and a special guest every month choose a game and we go over it and talk about it in a shorter, more informal kind of setting. It's almost like we're just hanging out and telling what we liked about the game, what we didn't like about the game, so on and so forth. So we decided this is too cool to sit behind Patreon for all of it. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some of the older episodes and put them out on this free podcast feed for you guys. And if you want to check out the new episodes of stuff that we're doing, you can go and subscribe to our Patreon for only $1, and you get the brand new book club episodes when they come out. That's all I got for right now. I hope you enjoy the episode, and I hope you come to see what we have on Patreon. Take it easy and enjoy the show. Good evening, loyal listeners, and welcome to another episode of Super Gamer Book Club. I do believe, as I've just been informed, this is episode 16. So I don't know how you've been here for 16 months, but I appreciate the heck out of you. For this month's book club, I'm going to just go ahead and give you a little insight here right off the top. This is the second piece of the Super Nintendo Entertainment System Holy Trinity, aka the 3 Super Nintendo games anybody who owns the console should have or play. And we are covering Zelda 3, aka The Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past.
Is that what people called it?
It is Zelda 3.
That's what Nintendo called it.
I've never heard it called that in my entire life.
I think it's been in some ads in Japan as Zelda 3.
Interesting.
If I'm not mistaken.
It was certainly also just like the shorthand in the lead up to its release before it came out that people were like excited for Zelda 3.
Yeah. Okay.
That voice that you just heard is one half of the how should I say, supreme lore keepers of all things Nintendo and cartridge related. That's Mr. Patrick and Mark of the Nintendo Cartridge Society. Gentlemen, thank you for being a guest again in this series now of Super Nintendo greats. Like I said before, when we cover Super Mario World, I wouldn't have anybody else on as guests. How are you doing this evening?
Doing great.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us back. I'm super excited to be here. Super excited to talk about Zelda 3. I'm just gonna call it that now. I love that.
You're welcome.
I'll do it too. We'll all embrace Zelda 3. I think that's good. Because I think the existing title, frankly, doesn't make any sense. Link to the Past. Not sure why it's called that.
It's not the past.
I mean, maybe it's earlier in the timeline. Like, who knows? But Adrian, I gotta know. Even with Zelda 3 here being in the Trinity, we're still not going to call it like the Triforce of Super Nintendo games that you need to play.
I thought about that, and I feel like that skews it a little too heavily towards Zelda, and I wanted it to be more of a neutral thing because I want all 3 of them to be equally appreciated for how good they are.
All right, I accept that logic. That's good logic.
Trust me, it ran through my mind, and I was this close to doing it, and I was like, I think everybody should get their shine.
Plus, it's easier to understand for our Christian listener base. They understand.
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah. All right, hold on, wait. I want to do this. So, of the 3 in the Trinity, which is the Father, which is the Son, which is the Holy Ghost?
I mean, Super Mario World has to be like the Father, right? Come on,
right?
Now.
Okay.
Right.
Everybody on planet Earth knows who. Well, most everybody who played a video game before knows who Mario is. So we'll give you that. The Son.
And then who is both God and Son of God?
This is a tough one.
This is a tough one.
See, I'm gonna say Zelda is probably the Son,
which puts Metroid at the Holy Spirit.
It does, because from what I listened to or tuned into before is the Holy Spirit is the one who like does the work, who gets down there and enforces everything and you know puts people in check. And
yeah, Holy Spirit's kind of a grunt, just like
the one kind of leading us through life. So Metroid, when I
Yeah.
played through that one, just take whatever it says to heart, and that's how I lived over my life.
It's
right,
true.
right.
The Holy Spirit is the real bounty hunter of the Trinity. I do
Yes,
think that's
yes,
right.
yes.
I do think that's right.
yeah.
I mean, I look, I have no other rationale. All I hear is that you know when it hits you, hey, what happens?
Yeah.
You get knocked out, you lose all sense of time and self. Come on now.
That's you've been hit with
Who
the
else
Holy
is going to
Spirit.
do that to you but a bounty hunter?
I love it. I love it.
Follow-up question.
Hit it.
Using the Triforces,
Okay.
courage, wisdom, and power, which of these three are courage and wisdom and power?
Metroid's power, obviously.
Yeah, I think for my money, it's the same order. I think Mario's courage, because and then I guess Link would be wisdom. Wisdom's the hardest one. Can Samus be two of them?
Tough.
Yeah,
I mean,
Sam-
if the son can be the father and vice versa, I don't see why not. Right? They're all three parts of the same thing. Did I just do the Catholic priest thing?
you kind of did. Yeah, you kind of did the sign of the cross.
Thank you for that blessing, Adrian.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
I
My
like
son.
that
My
we're
super son.
I like that we're only theologically out of our depth when we introduce the Triforce. We were fine with the Trinity.
Well, I couldn't imagine a better intro than that, so I appreciate you for that one. For those who have been living under a rock or are probably under the age of 20, The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, aka Zelda 3, as we've established, was a Super Nintendo game that came out in America in 1992 and in Japan in 1991. Developed, I want to say they started it maybe 90, around there, 89, 90. And all we knew that it was like Patrick was saying earlier is that it was going to be Zelda 3. We got a couple of screenshots here and there in some Nintendo powers, and before you knew it, it dropped and nothing was the same as far as adventure and exploring and games of that like. Now, I have said before that the SNES and myself share a birth year, so I wasn't necessarily fully cognizant when this title dropped. So I got to it a few years late. But I don't know if anybody else, if either of you two were here or around when this dropped, if you remember anything to the lead up of it or anything like that. If you have anything you want to talk about back then?
The two old men here in the chat.
No. I don't mean it like that. I mean like
no, we accept it. We accept it. Mark, I know your story is coming to it a little bit later.
Yeah,
right?
That's right. So I was alive when A Link to the Past was released, but I wasn't really aware of it. Like I didn't have Nintendo, I didn't have a Nintendo Power subscription. I had zero video game buying power and not a lot of ways to learn about video games other than, what my cousins had or what I would see at friends' house. So I was kind of aware of Link to the Past and all of that, and I played a little bit of it and watched my cousins played it, but it wasn't until it was released on the Game Boy Advance, so that kind of it's like a port / remake, I guess. That is the version that I played from start to finish first. And then it was only when they started I'm trying to think the first time that I played it on a home Nintendo console. It might have been the Switch, or the Super the SNES Classic Edition.
Classic.
Yeah, my story with Zelda 3 goes back to when it came out. I was a Nintendo Power subscriber in the in the early 90s. Yeah, that's right. And I wear it as a badge of honor. Thank you, guys.
Hey, you'll hear no gaff from me.
But as Zelda Link to the Past was the reason that I bought a Super Nintendo.
Okay.
So 92, I would have been 10 years old. And so I bought the Super Nintendo with my own money, had been saving up for a long time. Obviously, I had wanted it for years at that point. And I loved it. Like I must have seen someone playing it somewhere, because that's like my Zelda. My first Zelda was Zelda 2, and I kind of came around on the original Legend of Zelda later. But like, so my like appetite for Zelda was like coming from Zelda 2.
That's
And
interesting. I don't think I've heard anybody that their first one was 2, and that's not a disparaging thing. You never hear that. You always hear, oh, I started with 1, and then I went to 2, and then so on and so forth.
Well, it's just like the I don't know if that like shaped like what I was expecting from the series or what I liked about it.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just it was a result of like when you were a kid in the 80s and you just had like access to a stack of NES games, it like didn't matter what those NES games were, those were your favorite NES
Something
games,
to play,
right?
Yeah.
Like that's where you're like, oh yeah, Chippendale Rescue Rangers is one of the greatest NES games of all time. But I remember like committing most of Link to the Past to memory, and then having a God, it was like my parents and their friends like having a dinner party and just being like stuck in a room with like all the other kids who like aren't actually friends of mine, right?
Worst.
It's the worst. But one of those kids who was like maybe 3 years older than me, like I want to say we're like 11 and 14 or like 12 and 15, like just to the point where like that age gap really made a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And he was playing Link to the Past, and he was stuck in Ganon's Tower, the final dungeon. And I was like, oh, I know how to get through this. Like I can walk you through this. And it was one of those like heroic moments where I was like the dweeby little kid who like got them through the final dungeon of Link to the Past. So like, I don't know, this
like a
game
movie
is,
moment. You're all
it
right,
was,
kid.
yeah.
You're all
Hey,
right.
kid. And then they probably just kept making fun of me. So, but there was a brief shining moment where this game was my salvation socially. So yeah, I will always love this game.
Awesome. Oh, that's so cool to hear. Garrett, as a newcomer to this one, I'm sure you've heard of it in passing, of course, or seen, video clips here and there. Did it just never line up for you? Because I remember did you have a Super Nintendo or no?
Yeah, so I grew up with a Super Nintendo. I was telling the guys before the show too. It's like the main games I played was like Super Mario World, Super Mario Kart, and Mario Paint. Like that's kind of
Mario Paint.
Like, and we had a couple other ones, but those are the main 3 that were always in there. Like that's mainly what we did. I think we even had Aladdin for
Also
for
great.
Super Nintendo
Also
as well.
great.
That was a fun one, very hard, very difficult. So yeah, for us for the Super Nintendo specifically, games that we got from for that were like my dad would get games for that. That was kind of his console. I mean, it was his, when he was
I'm in the same boat
from being a kid and stuff like that. And so it being in the house is like, okay, this is mine. And when we get games, it's the ones that he wants to play.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just this random stuff. Or sometimes maybe like my mom wanted to play some. Like I think my mom loved Mario and stuff like that. But yeah, so I didn't have much say, and I had some of the gaming magazine. I have Nintendo Power, but I had like, and to set the timeline here, I was born in '93, so I was a -1 when this game came out. So, so this is like later '90s when I'm like 5 or 6. But I have a Game Pro magazine and stuff like that, and obviously at this point they're not writing about Link to the Past because it came out 8 years prior. But other PlayStation at this point, I was heavy into PlayStation stuff. I was about ready to play Metal Gear Solid, started
at a crisp
new trajectory.
6 years old.
At a crisp 6 or 7 years old. Yep.
Learned about Hind D.
Hind D. So
Metal
yeah,
Gear.
we not much experience, and to be honest, I am horrible with a lot of, up until recently, a lot of those earlier Zelda games. I always got a mix. Like I understood, like, okay, there's Legend of Zelda, like there's the first one, but 2 and 3, Link to the Past, and
Zelda
what's
2.
the second one?
Zelda 2.
Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link.
Is it called Adventure? Okay. For some reason, I always assumed Link to the Past was the second one. I don't know. I had those mixed up for years. Like people would say Link to the Past. I'm like, oh, Zelda 2. Like honestly, I don't even know. I don't think even now, I don't even think I've ever heard like Adventure of Link or whatever you said. So yeah. So in my head, they were always this one and the same, the second game and Link to the Past, until I'm like, oh, they are different because there is a second one on the NES. So yeah, that's my experience with the game, is not really knowing much about it until recently. And then you making me play it just last month.
Yes, I made you.
Forced me against my will, gun to my head.
Against your will, yes. Please play this overrated, underrated, whatever people want to say about it, masterpiece right now. Speaking of which, I don't know if you guys have heard, but there's this big, kind of similar to when Wind Waker had its big revisionist awakening, in the vein of, this was not a Mandela effect moment. I remember in those forums, everybody crapping all over Wind Waker when it first got announced because of the art style. And it seems like when you're on the internet these days, you cannot find anybody who doesn't absolutely love Wind Waker. So somebody is not telling the truth, and I don't know who it is on the internet.
Well, it's, I mean, the opinions on Wind Waker now are not tainted by, you know, the Space World demo and like seeing this like crazy looking realistic Legend of Zelda thing that people thought they were going to get, and then like having the rug pulled out from under them, like, no, it's actually this this cartoon thing. We've had the realistic Zelda since then, so it's no longer, I think even people that were like, I mean, and any reason to be upset, I suppose, is legitimate. But even the people who were legitimately upset or disappointed at the time, like the reason for being disappointed is basically evaporated.
Fair. The reason I bring that up is because I have seen on the other side of the coin, where people are now saying that A Link to the Past is overrated and it's not as good of a Zelda game as people claim it to be. I don't know if you guys have heard anything about this. Do you feel a certain way? I'm going to get into, I mean, I guess we can use this to lead into our initial impressions on the game.
Well, hold on a minute though, Adrian. I want to hear how you got to Link to the Past.
Oh, so it's kind of a similar situation to Garrett. My old man, he had an NES originally. And I used to watch him play the original Zelda on that. I was maybe probably about three or four. And I remember we got our SNES late. We got ours in 94, somewhere around there. So we came to all those games a little bit later. And I remember watching him play A Link to the Past, and then as time got on and he beat it, and he kind of, it kind of got pushed into the back line. That's when you're able to go in there and kind of sneak and make your own file. But please, for the love of God, don't delete his file.
Right.
Because he's got all the hearts, he's got all the bottles, he's got all this stuff. I made deathly sure not to touch that file. And that's pretty much one of the things where, outside of Super Mario World, it kind of opened up the idea to me of what an adventure game could be. Like, the original Zelda was the blueprint for that.
Yeah.
And this felt like it was the refinement that the genre needed, as far as taking that idea, adding to it, and expanding it way out from what it originally was. And I appreciate this game absolutely for that, because there are, just like Mario World, when we talked about that, there are games to this day who are still trying to nail the experience that you have when you play this game. So that is where I eventually wound up to it, and my initial impressions of it. I think it's just like Mario World. I think it's a masterpiece as far as the action adventure genre goes.
Yeah, I can't remember. I might have said this when we talked about Mario World, so if I'm repeating myself, I apologize. But I feel like something that's really special about the 16-bit era and like the Super Nintendo is that it feels like that a lot of the limitations of the 8-bit era that developers were up against were removed, and so developers were like able to kind of like go crazy. Like the Super Nintendo feels like to me kind of like the peak of the 2D gaming art form.
Mm-hmm.
And you see this in like RPGs, like with Final Fantasy, where it's just like, oh, it felt like it obviously wasn't, but it felt like the final evolution of gaming, where developers were able to be like, oh my gosh, like we could take the ideas, like the germ of the ideas that we were only barely able to explore in 8-bit and like really go crazy in 16-bit. And that's what Link to the Past feels like to me. It feels like the promise of like a Legend of Zelda, but just like in its like purest form.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and like that's true for Mario. It's true for Metroid, and like all three of those games, as they were on the NES, were almost sort of like platform transgressive in the first place, right? Like especially Super Mario Brothers 3, but Metroid and Zelda were all like doing things that like weren't really being done on the platform in general. They were all so ambitious and so big, in a way that like, you know, so much of the NES is just like replicating like arcade style experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And something like Zelda, something like Mario was like really pushing those boundaries, and then it's like super cool to see the Super NES take those and be like, now we blow it out into like a fully formed idea.
Right. This is what we were trying to convey originally with the 8-bit console, but now we can actually do it. Mark, I just wanted to piggyback off of what you were saying before, where when you were talking about how developers were able to just explode whatever they were actually thinking onto the screen. I remember seeing the Final Fantasy 6 intro for the first time when they were walking in the mechs and the credits start coming on the screen, and I remember being like, "Oh my god, this is just like a movie, dude." It was insane. Yeah, that to me is kind of like the representation of what this console is pretty much aping what Mark is saying. It's the first time developers got to taste freedom to do what you want, and I think that led to what we got now in Link to the Past. We were just about to move into our initial top level thoughts. I was going to start with the newcomer, Mr. Morlang, and see exactly what you thought, being somebody who has no history with this game.
Yeah. So I was actually really impressed by this, with not having any kind of history of old kind of RPG type games from that time at all. Yeah, I was a simple kid. I wasn't into RPGs as a kid. Give me some Mario or Crash Bandicoot or something like that. Keep it nice and easy and simple for me.
Equally good experiences. Not going to disparage those at all.
So jumping into this, I was like, I don't know what to expect. Like Super Nintendo, it can't be that complicated or crazy, right? It's got to be pretty.
Little do you know,
pretty simple. And then I jump in and I'm like, holy smokes! Like, I was just blown away. Like the main world was a lot larger than I thought it was going to be. The light world, and then the fact that they have a dark world on top of that. Like, hey, you know what? Here's the same world, but it's actually different. It's not the same world. It's like we're giving you a second map here, with a bunch of new enemies and characters and stuff going on. Yeah, overall, I was just really impressed by this. In the end, like, I don't know how deep you want us to get into our thoughts here. I don't know if this will necessarily be like a favorite game of mine of all time, or even on the list at all. But it's like, if anything, I stepped away with a lot more respect for some of those old games, especially this.
You can see why people talk about
and
it.
And I can totally see why. And I did have fun with it. Like, there was definitely times where I was having some fun with it. Although some of these old games, like it's such a different way of thinking to get through some of these puzzles without having that experience as a kid from like when I was a kid. it's new to me. Like I'm trying to figure it out. I'm like, what is going on here? So I'm going to be completely honest. Like a lot of it, I end up using a walkthrough because I'm like, I don't know what's going on. It's like, what? How would I ever know to like take 3 steps this way, 1 step this way, drop a bomb here, and then do a backflip, and then this happens? It's like, what? Are you kidding me? So it was.
That's what the players' guides are there for.
It was a hard game, which thinking back, I'm like, I don't know if little Garrett would have ever been able to figure this one out. But even older Garrett had a hard time doing it. But yeah, overall, very impressed. A lot of respect for it. And I did have fun. It's really a beautiful game. Like playing on the Switch, I was really impressed with how it looked on the OLED, beautiful colors. Looks pretty slick. It holds up pretty well for today, honestly. Mm-hmm. One last thing. It actually, even some of like the way the enemies looked and stuff like that, and the colors and art style, at least again on the Switch, it reminded me a lot of what's the other Zelda game we did? The rhythm one. Cadence of Hyrule. I was like, oh, this feels and looks like a lot like Cadence of Hyrule. Like now I understand where they were going with that, with the art style and like enemy style and stuff of that. I'm like, that makes a lot more sense.
It's the vice versa. Cadence of Hyrule is trying to look like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Mark?
Yeah, so I've played played A Link to the Past a couple of times now. So Garrett, I'm curious what your experience was. I mean, I played it a few times, but Garrett, I still use a guide to get me through like some of this or be like, where exactly should I be going right now? I'm curious,
I don't remember
Garrett,
a lot.
yeah, I'm curious, Garrett, did you like mainline it? Did you go from dungeon to dungeon to dungeon, or did you like do some of the side quest stuff that comes with it, just kind of like exploring Hyrule?
Yeah, I explored a little bit, but I pretty much, the guide I was using, I basically 100% of the game by the end. So I guess I did a lot of the side quests too, if I imagine. Maybe not all of them, but I had all the items, I had all the jars, I had all the hearts, like whatever the guide I was using was like basically 100% of the game. So I think I did a lot of the side things. But and again, a lot of those things, like I never would have found this guy. How would I have ever known to come over here and find a heart here or do whatever? Like crazy stuff. Or changing. The one thing with the thief opening up that one chest or something like that. I'm like, what the heck? Like, are you kidding me? Like going to a different world with this stupid treasure chest just to have him unlock it to get a heart or jar or something like that. So
yeah, it's the last bottle.
Yeah, 100%. And so the reason I ask is because the last time I played it back in 2020, I did the same thing, Garrett. I 100%ed it. And this time I was like, okay, I'm just going to like get through it just to kind of refresh my memory. So I just went from dungeon to dungeon, and I had less fun with it this time because I feel like I mean, look, I love A Link to the Past, but I realized for me in this playthrough that the joy for A Link to the Past is like in like those interactions that you have with like side characters, or when you're, what is it, the second bottle where you like swim underneath the bridge and there's just the dude that's
the
like
homeless dude just there.
That's just like chilling there, and you're like, oh, that's like fun, that's like really surprising. Like I feel like Link's Awakening gets a lot of credit, rightfully, for having like quirky characters and writing and stuff, and I feel like A Link to the Past has a lot of that. It's just you can you don't have to interact with it. Like if you just go from place to place, you miss a lot of those details. And I feel like for me personally, the 2D Zelda dungeons in A Link to the Past and like Link's Awakening, they begin to wear thin by the end of the game, especially if you're just going from one to the other. Like I feel like the puzzles and like everything are just so limited because you just have like the flat plane to play with. It's a lot of like pull this or push that. And so while like when I'm just doing the dungeons, I find it maybe not like the most fun. I just think like all the surprises in the world, like what is the like, blanking on the name, but like the happiness fountain or whatever, where you can throw rupees in and like all that kind of stuff. I feel like that's the joy for me of A Link to the Past and what makes it such a great game.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. Like, it's, and again, that's why I think I really did find like, wow, I really respect this game for what they were able to do, because it is jam-packed. Like, not only is there a whole game there, but then there's all this side stuff that A, someone could totally miss, and B, it just adds so much. Like it's really is incredible. Like with yeah, running into those little random people or the funny little things at the the characters just popping out of a waterfall. Like there's a one, was it fish or dragon or whatever?
Yeah,
it
the
is, like
Zora.
the creature.
Yeah.
The Zora that comes out and stuff like that. Like I love that. That wasn't a side thing necessarily, but
Garrett,
it's
that's
just
what
fun
the
little interactions
Zoras
like
used
that.
to be. They used to be weird fishmen, like
Yes.
Black Lagoon kind
Really?
of guys. Yeah,
Not big
Crazy.
beefcakes like they are now.
that's right.
Oh man.
Patrick, you're up.
Geez. I feel like I've played this game too many times. To the point where like my experience with it. I can't imagine using a guide. For me now, just because I know every individual piece of the game so completely, that like I just sort of, I pop out of a dungeon and I'm like, all right, now I'm gonna like go over to this side of the map and just like everything that I see will like trigger a memory of like, oh, I should go over here and like do this. And for me, one of the most like rewarding parts is the first time you get into Kakariko Village, and there are just like 10 tiny side quests that just like appear where it's like, okay, I gotta like go down in here and like push these boxes around and get the thief's treasure, and then I gotta like go down and like bomb this thing in the lower left hand corner. I gotta chase the running man. I gotta get the bug's net. Like all these things that like just having this like living breathing village there to like clear out is so much fun for me. And then, Mark and I were talking about like this dungeon problem last night, and I was leading into the last 3 dungeons of the Dark World, and I was sort of feeling that same kind of fatigue too, of like, yeah, a lot of the puzzle solving is just like now you got to like go back through and like go in like the reverse way to like get somewhere after having flipped a switch, especially in that ice palace. The ice palace always kind of like messes with my head.
That brick you moved, now move it back.
Yes, that's right. And like I was feeling that, but then like after he and I talked about it and just like I got to like vent about it for a second, I was like, no, wait a minute, I love this. And just really enjoyed spending time, with Lincoln in that world. And I mean, I hope we can set aside a little time to just like talk about the absolute like end sequence of the game, with that Koji Kondo music. Is just some of the best. I just finished before we got on this call. It's just such an impressive, such a moving like piece of music, and like these little vignettes just like closing off all the loose ends. A lot of the things that you like opened up that first time you were in Kakariko Village. Yeah, I mean, I love this game.
That is friggin' awesome. I am over the moon that you guys are. I mean, of course, I know you two already are. But that Garrett, you ended up enjoying it as much as you did. One of the things that I and Patrick kind of hit it a little bit early, that I really enjoy about this game is the soundtrack. It's stellar. It's way better than any right it has to be. I remember the first time when you go into Kakariko Village and you kind of hear what I assumed always was kind of do you hear like maybe like a little bit of a brass in a sense, or like some strings when that first starts to come in, or what they're trying to convey to be?
Yeah.
Like a wind section kind of.
Well, there's like that arpeggiated like low strings that and then that like sort of it's like a whistle sort of sound that's like doing the melody of Kakariko Village. Yeah, it's very like sweet and very pastoral.
That I don't know, that just does something to me. It makes you feel comfortable in a sense. I guess because they're trying to convey the fact, of course, that Kakariko Village is like, it's a nice little cozy here village. We have our, our rascals and things like that in here, but you could settle down here if you'd like. I appreciate that. And I always appreciate too, and this has been the same, of course, throughout the series, but I think this is like one of the best interpretations of it. Whenever you go back into the field, that good cue of when the Hyrule Field music kicks off and you're like, all right, that's what it makes you feel like. It's like, all right, we're going adventuring, and then you just set off. That's one of the
They
best.
pulled me back in.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, well, here we go again. Got to go to the next temple, or got to go find this secret. That is also, I think it plays into one of the strengths of the game too, and any Zelda game really that people regard highly is the exploration. I think is always the meat and potatoes of the game. I never thought that, at least in my opinion, the dungeons are the least important part of the game. I always thought that the exploration was always front and center. Even all the way up to Breath of the Wild, a lot of people had a lot to say or a lot of criticism about the divine beasts being the main dungeons in the game. And I'm like, dude, the divine beasts don't matter. Did you ever run across and find like the lady who has the garden, and if you step on it, she has a temper tantrum? It's like, that's the fun stuff to find. That's the fun thing about the game. And it's the same thing here. It's like the temples, I do appreciate them, and they are a nice like progress indicator of, okay, we're going towards our ultimate goal. But at the same time, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to wrangle these chickens. And I'm going to, you know what I mean? I'm going to do that.
Yes.
I'm going to catch that thief. I'm going to find the fairy fountains. I'm going to do it.
It's so like just like noting the way that they're like presented differently, the dungeons versus like the overworld. When you're on the overworld and you hit that X button and you just get that beautiful map. The map of Hyrule is something I could just stare at for hours. It's gorgeous, and you know when you're zoomed in on it and it's in all of its Mode 7 glory, just like with these warped pixels. Yeah, and then you zoom out. Like that's all awesome and feels like immersive and cool, and it feels like a world. When you push X and you're in a dungeon, you get this like very sort of like schematic view. Provided that you've collected
on like a little scroll, like you're walking around like doing like this. Oh wait, I gotta go in this room. I think
I gotta put myself in the map. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, but I always feel like the map of the dungeons is so much less engaging than the map of the overworld.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Adrian, one thing I want talking about the soundtrack, I completely agree with you, and I feel like one of the interesting things about the soundtrack is coming to it with like modern sensibilities where we're used to really cinematic game scores where, you know, like the score is perfectly matched to the action. You know, you kind of like just take it for granted. But in the Super Nintendo era, like when you think about it, like the last Zelda game had maybe like 3 or 4, maybe 5 like music cues, and they just kind of like played on a short repeating loop. And you think about like all the musical textures that are in A Link to the Past and how it's like perfectly timed to the moment. Like on our show just a few weeks ago, we talked about all the different openings of Zelda games, like opening chapters. And A Link to the Past is so good. It's like so atmospheric, and there's like, you know, music for when it's raining outside, and then you get into the dungeon or the castle and you're like helping Zelda escape, and then you get to like the sanctuary, and that has like its own theme. And then after that, you know, like you go outside, it's a bright sunny day, and like Hyrule is just there for you to explore. Like the whole thing is just like such an amazing kind of like package.
Well, and just to piggyback on that for a sec, Mark, it's not just that the like music is designed well to tell that story, but like the whole sonic landscape like tells the story too. Because like, you know, you think about like the sound effects of like the thunder and the rain from that opening, and then when you're in a dungeon or you're in a cave, that like all your footsteps have like echoes on it. Like I can close my eyes and hear the sound of Link stepping in water. You know, like all of these little things. It just does so much to, you know, like you said, Mark, things that you would take for granted now. Like, well, of course, it's going to sound different when he steps in water, but like that wasn't what the original Zelda was, and it's amazing to see like all of those things at play together in Link to the Past.
I could not agree with you more, and I was just thinking while you were talking about, I'm like, if I had to pick one thing that really sticks out to me, I think, as far as the sound goes, I would probably say it's when you first pull the Master Sword.
Yeah.
The stinger that plays. It's just and the way that they use, because it's sort of quiet on your trip up to it. Like there's music, of course, but it's really, really subdued. And then when you finally get there and it seems like the entire, orchestra swells up when you pick up that Master Sword for the first time. And it's a very good indicator of the magnitude of what the action you just did is.
Well, and it transforms the forest, right? Like,
Yeah.
you get the visual cue too.
Mhm.
This like heavenly chorus,
Yeah.
and again, it's I'll keep shouting out the Mode 7 capabilities of the Super NES, but like those semi-translucent clouds that like were covering the forest are now gone, and you get the sunlight dappling through the tree leaves, and it's just magic.
Yeah.
And I
The
know
animals running around.
I love that, Garrett. I love that. I love like the little
Yeah.
animals on their like scripted
Yeah.
track, just like running past you. That to me, I love that so much.
It's like a Disney movie.
Yeah.
Hey, we didn't know they were scripted back then, okay? They were running. They just came darting out of the trees trying to see what was
right.
going on back then, all right? How do you guys feel about how this plays? I think it's pretty similar as far as overall control scheme to the Zelda that's come before it. Not Zelda 2, the original Legend of Zelda, as far as your movement. You move with the D-pad, you attack with the sword, and then now you have a couple of buttons for your items and whatnot. And of course, you can do more actions. You can pull stuff, push stuff. Anybody got anything for that?
Yeah. Go ahead, Garrett.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Well, I guess I was just shocked by. I don't know, and maybe I'm kind of having a hard time remembering, but I don't know. I just felt like, okay, granted, obviously I was playing on a Switch, not playing on the original hardware. So I'm trying to think back to what a SNES controller looks like. But I'm like,
Four
man,
face buttons.
yeah, we got buttons here. I just felt like they weren't using all the buttons they could have been using. Like, were all the face buttons used on the Super Nintendo or no? Because I feel like they weren't.
The X button brings up the map, which is maybe a misuse of the X button. The B button swings the sword, the A button makes you dash, and the Y button uses the item that you have equipped.
Okay, so yeah, I guess they were all used, but it definitely so there was a few times like, man, I wish I could have like a couple items equipped. Like, why can't one of the shoulder buttons be like an item or something? I don't know, something like that. Like,
Yeah, or just cycle through.
Now you're talking crazy. 2 items at the same time?
Yeah.
What's next?
Yeah,
You're gonna want to switch your gear too, huh? Switch your tunic.
Yeah, Garrett, you're right. Like again, the first time I played it was on the Game Boy Advance, which only had 2 face buttons, but it worked. So yeah, they must not have been really like utilizing X and Y that heavily if they figured out a way to make it work on the Game Boy Advance.
Well, but the GBA has the shoulder buttons, which
yep.
the Link to the Past on Super NES doesn't really use.
Oh yeah, I guess that's true.
Yeah.
So yeah, unutilized button no matter where it's no matter where you play it.
Yeah. But yeah, so that was my biggest thing for me is just like it felt fine and great. Like, combat was good and traversing was fine. Like, I felt like it didn't like stutter or act weird, or it's not like there's any sort of like delay or anything like that. It's a very responsive game for a Super Nintendo. It felt very good actually. But yeah, my biggest thing I kept thinking of is like, it is such a pain in the butt when I'm trying to do a puzzle and I gotta do this and then quick switch over to something else and then do that and then like run over here.
Oh
and, like,
my good man, you've never played Link's Awakening.
Like, oh my god, it was so horrible. I'm like, I mean, I'm just spoiled by modern games, but I'm like, man, like, give me like at least one more button. One more button would be nice.
You know what I sort of missed from like a modern gaming perspective this time around, and Garrett, I was thinking about this when you were saying like the combat feels good. I sort of missed the dodge button.
Ooh.
Oh yeah.
Like,
yeah,
I recently played Tunic, and like, Tunic has very like Zelda vibes, but like they let you dodge in that game.
Yeah.
Like it's been 30 years. I think we can figure out some kind of a mechanic here.
Yeah, just jump out of the way, please.
Mark, you, I think, and I share a common thing here. In I think we both were the ones that played the GBA version of the game. Have you played the original, or is it only ever been the GBA one?
So I have played it on. I played the original on like Switch or in maybe the SNES Classic. I can't remember, but yeah, my first experience with it was coming from the Game Boy Advance.
Okay. The reason I ask is because I decided to play the GBA version because I haven't played that one, God, since it came out, and it claims to do a lot of it's in a weird way. It's like a shot-for-shot remake, but it's formatted to fit the GBA display, of course. So they took the time, kind of like Patrick was saying, except they didn't think to add the dodge button this time. But they went through and they were able to fix a lot of stuff that they weren't able to when they originally released the game. One of the big ones, I think, was being able to save anywhere on the map or near a dungeon. And actually, when you pick back up, you're right where you left off. You don't have to start from your house or the sanctuary. That was huge. They also, I don't know what it was about the Game Boy Advance era that they decided to add extra sound effects where they did not need to be. It didn't kill it for me, but hearing N64 Kid Link all the time was like,
oh,
I don't know how I
really?
feel about that.
They did like added voice cues.
Oh yeah, every time you swing the sword in the GBA one, it's the Kid Link. Yeah, the entire yes. When you fall
That's
down
a
holes.
mistake.
Oh man.
Yeah,
That's a mistake.
do you? Sorry, what?
Oh, so as you brought up saving. This is good. I played on the Nintendo Switch, so I just did save states. How do you save in the game? In the original game, I don't even know if I know where. Is it just in the menu?
Yeah, you press start and you go down to save. Or
I don't think I ever
select. Yeah.
Okay.
It's select.
Yeah, and then you
I never even like went and hit like the menu, like went deep into the menus at all. So it was afterwards. I sat down. I'm like, I set the console down. I'm like, I don't know if I ever saved. Like, I don't have a saved game. It's just a save state on my Switch at this point.
You're placing a lot of faith in those save states.
Yeah.
It'll also offer to save when you die.
Mm-hmm.
Like it'll save your progress.
I never did. 100%.
You never did.
No deaths.
Kept rewinding.
Rewind, baby.
Well,
real gamer.
Speaking of rewinding, what do you guys think of the bosses in this game?
I think some are good, and that one that knocks you off the platform is annoying.
Oh my God, I know exactly what the one you're talking about that bounces off the corners, like the DVD little screensaver.
That worm thing at the end of the third temple. Yeah, it's I hate that thing.
Oh my God. That one, and for some reason I could never get the angle right on the sand temple one, where they come out of there, they come shooting up out of the sand, and then they kind of do this, and then they go back down into it.
So frustrating.
Oh my God.
I hated, especially on this playthrough, the like butterfly one. I felt like Garrett, on this playthrough I was with you, I relied purely on save states and like rewind, and so I was like, do you know what, I'm not even really worried about hearts. Like I got some hearts, but I would go into boss battles with like, you know, two hearts left. And so that butterfly, it was too much, because it was so much rewinding. It'd be like I'd have to get one hit, and then it'd be like, oh no, I died, so I'd have to go like back 2 seconds and like get it perfect each time.
I'll just rewind that right here, start it over.
Exactly.
I'll save state before I go into this room. Hey, look, Nintendo put it there, okay? If they're gonna put it there, I'm gonna use it.
Oh yeah, no, it's legit. It's a legit way to do it.
Right.
I mean, one of the things that I almost always end up doing is like strong arming my way to the cape. Like I get the magic cape as soon as possible, and sometimes I'll leave temple bosses like I'll go into the temples in the Dark World and like get the item and then hightail it out of there because I don't want to fight the boss until after I've collected that cape, so I can just be invisible and wail on them up close, which is usually how I do the moth.
A solid strategy. I'm not mad at it. How, and I guess Garrett, we could start with you because this would have been the big revelation for you at this point. How did you feel about the I guess they did it, the Pokemon before was Pokemon trick of oh, you thought you finished the game? Here's the entire other half of it for you to go and explore now in the Dark World. Kind of like how when you got your 8 badges, oh, here's another whole region to go get some more.
Did you know that was coming, Garrett? Did you know before you started playing?
I did not. No, I having never played it, and I was using the walkthrough, but it didn't click with me. Like, look, because it obviously the walkthrough has a bunch of sections, and it didn't click in my head. Like, oh, I'm only like the third of the way through. It was a little bit of a shocker because it's like I've spent all this time collecting. Because at the beginning you're collecting the gemstones, whatever they are. Right. And then, you're like, okay, I don't know what's going to happen, but this is all the other Zelda games. That's what it is. You collect the 3, you fight Ganon, you're done. Right. Like it's kind of the general gist, at least kind of it. So, when all of a sudden there's this like drop you do the boss battle, and then they drop you on the top of the pyramid, right? In the Dark World. And you're just like, wait, what? Where am I? What's going on?
Why am I a rabbit?
Like, what's happening? Yeah, why am I a rabbit? What's happening? It was a little bit of a shocker for sure. I mean, it wasn't like flip out of my chair crazy, but I was like, oh my God. And that's kind of when it hit me. Like, this game is huge. Like, I already felt like I put a substantial amount of time into like just that first part of the game. I'm like, all right, I've done a few bosses. I'm feeling good. This feels about the good length for a Super Nintendo game, you know? And then when it's like, no, there's more.
Psych.
Keep going. It's like, oh my gosh.
And then they do the same thing on the Nintendo 64 a couple of years later. Like, it's almost the exact same trick of like, get these 3 things, pull the Master Sword. Oops, there's like 3 times as much game still left.
I guess that's true. I forget. It's been a while since I played Ocarina of Time, but I guess they did it with that, huh? Yeah. Crazy. But yeah, so for me it was like not like a crazy moment, but more of this like, again, it was like when it kicked in, like, oh man, I got some mad respect for this game because this thing's huge for the Super Nintendo. Like, how are they doing this? So it's pretty sweet.
Patrick, did it hit the same way for you?
I mean, I don't. Again, I feel like I know the game too well now to like have any like moments of it like surprise me or anything
I mean,
like that.
I mean, like if you can remember initially when it happened.
Oh, I don't. This is the game's been in my life so long, like I don't remember a time before it. You know,
it's always been a light and dark world
from the beginning.
It's like Luke, I am your father, right? It's like, I just always knew that, you know.
I knew it before I saw the movie. I knew it before the movie was made, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, they're making the one where he's his father. Oh, finally.
All right. Yeah. No, we knew this.
Mark, did that blow your top?
Yeah, I remember having the same reaction as Garrett, where it was just like, oh, great, I got the 3 pendants. I'm gonna like, go defeat the boss, all good. And then when there's the Dark World and you have to get like 6 or something more crystals. That was a big deal. Like when the game really opens up and you're like, oh my gosh, I have there's a lot more to do here. Is a really cool experience.
Yeah.
I think last thing I should have led with this, but we were already too deep into it. Garrett, you had mentioned that you had played this on the OLED, and you were talking about how the art style really kind of popped out as far as the colors was concerned. And I was just going to see if you wanted to elaborate any more about the art and the design of the world, and if you had any kind of if it impacted you, if it enhanced your journey. Did you feel like it was a hindrance at all, maybe because things weren't communicated clearly in 16-bit language?
No, I mean, with as few pixels as they are able to use, uh, I was very impressed with the art style in this game. And even like I'm scrolling through right now, I have like a wiki up with like some of the enemies. It's crazy. Like some of these enemies, they straight up have like shadows and reflections and stuff on them. Like it's crazy. And in the game, you can see that. Like if you really look at it, it's really impressive what they're able to do. And they're just like some fun, creative little characters. And for me, not really knowing the history necessarily of Zelda, I've played some of the newer games. And then like playing these ones and being like, oh, that's where like this type of enemy came from. That's where this character, like, because they kind of, you can tell there's like these homages throughout all the games. They kind of go back to like kind of similar type characters or enemies and stuff like that throughout. So yeah, I'm very impressed with it. I love the color scheme, and yeah, it is. I just noticed, yeah, King Zora here. It's so funny, like how much they've changed over the years. But like that was so cool, like seeing him pop out of that waterfall. I'm like, heck yeah, this thing's awesome. Like I want to spend more time over here. So
They've evolved over the centuries, over the millennia
Yeah.
between games. That's how we'll
yeah,
we'll present it.
yeah, there you go.
I'm in the
And then-
same
and
boat
then-
as you.
And then with the map too, yeah. Patrick was talking about it earlier, but holy cow, is the map gorgeous? Like it's crazy. It's crazy what they're able to do with so little. Getting to the final boss fight with Ganon, and like he's such like a hulking creature, and he just looks so freaking cool. Like I loved him. I loved his design.
Yeah.
So yeah, very, very just again jaw dropping kind of just respect. Just oh my gosh, like how do they do this? Like it's every step of the way. I kept finding myself saying that. Like how did they do this? This is amazing.
That's what happens when you have a room full of talented people.
Yeah.
Garrett, you played a lot of Mario Paint growing up, right? You didn't by any chance happen to have the Nintendo Power guide to Mario Paint?
No, I was just winging it.
This is a great tome full of there's like little graphs, like little graph paper, like demonstrations of like how to create your own like stamps of like the Nintendo characters. And it's all like, using the Super Nintendo versions of these characters. So like, some Mario characters are like already built in there, but I mean, check out this guide at some point if
I'll have to look that up.
if you get a chance. But so like here I'm just like sharing here where like they would show you how to like actually make the stamps for like Mario
that's
characters.
Sick, yeah.
But then they would do the same with the Zelda characters. So I'm showing like a view of Zelda and of Link. And the thing that really strikes me about like the way Zelda is designed is that she looks like identical to like a super mushroom. Like there's a sort of like shared aesthetic in like the way eyes and faces are constructed between Super Mario World and The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. That like there's some
It's
like
almost as if
unifying design theory.
The same people may have worked
almost
on both
like it.
games.
It's almost like it. But you don't have to use the same like design style, right? Like but between those
Fair.
two games, it's they got like further and further apart from each other as the two franchises would progress. But
Yeah.
like there's something to me about just like the 2 pixels on top of each other to represent like the blacks of the eyes, and then like white around that. Link's pink hair that he doesn't have in any other game except I guess Link Between Worlds. There's just there's the very specific aesthetic of Link to the Past is just very cool to me.
That was a software limitation, if I'm not mistaken, right? Or hardware
There?
limitation, because they could only have so many colors on screen, right? That he had pink hair.
Yeah, I don't know, because like there are times when he has a yellow shield, so like
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I
Sorry,
wonder
Mark, I
if
cut you off.
No, I was gonna say I wonder if it was a choice to like because especially Garrett, if you were playing it on an HD hardware the first time, you didn't get that CRT TV kind of like smear. And so I want I can't remember if I read this somewhere or maybe I'm just making it up, but that the pink hair was to help like visually kind of like break up Link as a character and kind of make it clear that was like hair and not something else. But the one thing I wanted to say on like the aesthetics of it is that I feel like A Link to the Past has become so I think there was a time where like 2D games and pixel art and everything were just considered old, but thanks to indie games like like the games in the style of A Link to the Past are like modern games now. And so I think that it helps people who otherwise would not be interested in playing like a retro game like A Link to the Past. You can go back to it and it doesn't feel old. It feels modern. It feels like in the style and of like an indie game that was inspired by A Link to the Past. And so I like that has I to my mind helped people like kind of like rediscover it or feel okay about playing these retro games.
Man, you guys are just. I'm honestly I'm like dumbfounded because I'm just sitting here listening and soaking everything up. I appreciate it. I was waiting. I was like, oh, I hope somebody else is gonna jump in on this because I could just listen all night. But I think we are coming here nearly to the end. So I wanted to give everybody the floor if they had any closing thoughts. I'll start, of course. I think this game is a absolute classic. I feel like it's one of the ones, if you're into this genre at all, adventure, I guess action, in a sense, action adventure games, I feel like this is one of the ones where, the corny 50 games you have to play before you die. I think this is definitely one that has to go on there as far as I'm concerned. It's not only is it's gaming history, like Mark was just saying, a lot of games that come from this, that are descendants of this, it just birthed an entire swath of people who grew up with this and now are able to make games based on this because they were so enamored and inspired with it. And I don't think I see this game leaving the what's the word? Not zeitgeist, but I guess the general consciousness anytime soon, just because of the mark that it's made in gaming history. Anybody else got anything on the way out? Closing thoughts? The floor is yours.
I just want to say video games are cool. Like,
oh yeah, absolutely.
Video games are so freaking cool. No, this game was a blast to play. I'm glad I played it because, yeah, going into these games, like sometimes I'm like I definitely have some old games that I like, but in general, I'm like, old games are old. Like, all right, I got enough new games on my backlog, let alone all the hundreds of old games that I could bring up on my backlog to play. But I feel like this really is a part of like gaming history that everyone really needs to play. Cause like I said, if anything, I'm coming away with so much respect for this, for what they're able to do with the limited hardware. Like, it's still incredible, beautiful art. Fantastic soundtrack that you just want to like sit and like groove to forever. And then and like honestly, like not a bad story. I mean, they managed to like get you, with the fake ending almost, like, oh nope, just kidding, there's a whole nother adventure ahead of you, son. So I highly recommend it.
You thought it was Aghanim? No, sir.
I am overall very thankful to have played this game. For being in that Thanksgiving season, still pretty close to it. I'm very thankful for this game.
What are we thankful for?
Yeah, I'll just say that, I to Garrett's point, it is a old game, and that's why anytime I go back to it, I'm still kind of like surprised when I'm reminded like how funny and inventive and like clever this game is. Like, it is so much more than just, like it is 100% so foundational for the Zelda franchise, right? Like Patrick was saying, Ocarina of Time echoes this game very heavily, and like the go to a dungeon, get an item, use it to defeat the boss, go to the like all of that is the Zelda formula, 100% true. But when you get outside the dungeons and you're just exploring Hyrule, like, I think that it feels incredibly modern in its sensibilities and is like a great game that stands on its own.
Yeah, it modern in its sensibilities and like modern in its like the swings that it takes at like emotional resonance.
Mhm.
Like, you know, the story is like good and well constructed, but it's not, you know, like Link doesn't have like the journey that Link goes on is the journey that the player goes on, right? Like you understand the world, you see two sides of it, you end up saving the light from the dark. But like the way that the end of the game, you know, I touched on this earlier, like reflects back on the experiences that you had and like shows you like, here's where these people are now. Remember that little boy that got lost in the dark world playing the flute who got turned into a tree?
This is him
he's
now.
Back.
Feel old yet?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. This is what he looks like now. You won't believe it. Doctors hate this man. But just the way that it like can reflect every moment back to you, it feels very much like you have accomplished something. And in at the end, as I was watching the credits roll just a couple hours ago, there's this absolutely beautiful bespoke piece of music that very slowly builds up to like the, you know, vanilla Legend of Zelda theme, but beautifully orchestrated with 16-bit orchestral instruments. But the build is so slow and so patient. And there are these like beautiful like counter melodies coming in too, that like I'm sure I have this experience every time, but like I had it today where I was just like moved by the music. And just like felt the entirety of like the spirit of adventure of the Legend of Zelda series all at once, and was alone in my apartment.
Adventure.
The spirit. That's the Holy Spirit
The
of adventure.
Holy Spirit of adventure. Yeah.
All right, we got to go back. We got to change it now. Now Zelda's the Holy Spirit. No, I'm just look, guys. I'm trying to say that I wept in my apartment listening to this music.
I know. I picked up what you were putting down.
Yeah,
and I don't think you should be ashamed at all. That just means that the music was doing its job.
Yeah, but that's that all of which is just to say that like there are emotional rewards throughout this game, even up to the very last second.
Right on, gentlemen. I cannot thank you enough for regaling me about this absolute gem. Cornerstone, however you want to remember it or describe it, of a game. I cannot wait until we do this again. We got one more to go in our Holy Trinity. That is finally we are going to talk about the Holy Spirit itself. Yeah, I can't thank you guys enough. Mark, Patrick, you guys are always a delight. You bring a lot of insight and you put my thoughts into words that I can't articulate. So I appreciate you guys for doing that, for being a couple of smarty pantses. I appreciate you. Where can the good people find you and what are you guys up to?
You can find us on the Nintendo Cartridge Society podcast, anywhere that you get your podcasts. We do 2 episodes a week, one on Tuesday that is catching up on the latest Nintendo news. And then on Thursdays, we do like a kind of like a topic episode. We do a lot of rankings, talking about games like A Legend of Zelda, Link to the Past. And check us out there.
Yeah, anywhere you get your podcast, just look for the Nintendo Cartridge Society podcast.
There it is.
Sweet.
Ladies
Links
and
to all
gents,
that will be in the description, by the way.
absolutely.
You'll know where to find it. You'll know right where to find it.
Come on now. It's been 16 of these. You should figure out where things are at this point. I mean, of course you're new, unless you're new. Hello. Hi. Nice to meet you. Stick around, please.
Thank you for
know
supporting
how to
us on
find
Patreon.
Stuff. They search. People know how to search.
That's fair.
Sometimes you'd
That's
be
fair.
surprised.
They had to find us somehow.
You'd be
What?
surprised.
No,
People-
don't insult them. They just got here.
I feel like I have to do that at least once in a book club episode. I'm always insulting the listeners. I'm sorry. All right, I'll stop.
For this month's book club, ladies and gentlemen, that is a wrap. Thank you for hanging out with us. We will see you on the next one. Finally, I finally got my long-awaited Christmas present. Garrett, are you ready? Oh, we're doing Kingdom Hearts. Oh, I can't wait.
Oh, no.
Yes. The first Kingdom Hearts game, Kingdom Hearts 1, is gonna be our next book club episode. Me, you, and Mr. KK Ryder. Be on the lookout for that. I believe.
Merry Christmas, Adrian.
Look, this is the best present you could have gave me. All right, I appreciate this. This is gonna be
Good,
fun.
because I'm not getting you anything else after this. After you made me do this.
I cashed in my ticket. I'm fine with that. All right, good people. Until next time, take care. We're out. Peace. And that's a wrap. Thanks for hanging out with us. I hope you enjoyed the episode. As a reminder, if you want to catch any of the new episodes the first Friday that they come out of every month, you can find them only on our Patreon. That's patreon.com/supergamerboys. And don't forget to check out our main episodes too. Those are pretty cool if I say so myself. All right, we're out of here. Peace.